I don't know. It's 11:36. Just decided to start recording. Some people asked me a little while ago. Didn't ask me rather, but I offered to let them know about a ritual I perform periodically to open pathways. This matrix obeys when we give action and thought a marriage with form. We impress instructions through the subconscious mind onto the field. And through that, the use of ritual can become a powerful thing. It requires more than the intent, but the actual action behind it as well. And the symbols that the subconscious mind understands, which we learn about through, its physics. We learn how symbols interrelate things to the matrix. An inverted pentagram versus a right side up pentagram, what it can represent. I'm not going to go into that, but the use of ritual can become incredibly important if enough people are performing an act to really boost the signal impressed on the field at any particular time. That's why, certain days were marked as important, so that the observation of certain rituals could be used to grant power to an idea. And people would evoke those rituals through, eating or merrymaking. There'd be certain things about to lend power to an idea. And that idea, for quite a long time has been espoused mainly around what in this modern time is known as a sort of a Christian ideology. It's an amalgam of many collective ideologies from long ago. Many different ritualistic observations at different points in different seasons, like the fertility season in Aries, just sort of acknowledging that there is that it's time to have sex, that it's time to laugh and play. It's time to get not just naughty, but innocent. Whatever it is that attracts the polarity in our lives to get things going. Whatever puts the juice in our veins to get us out the door, wanting to look good, wanting to smell good, wanting to be better, wanting to engage the world and engage society. These rituals were marked to teach us how to come together and how to, through the physics of socializing, how to sort of symbolically utilize the elements to program us into a form of predictability that gave life its general rhythm. It's a very basic rhythm, and it's based on, these pagan rituals. And these dates are based on very occult, but very observable, quite apparent physics, if you know what to look for. When you just observe the behavioral patterns of people through the seasons, you get a general idea of what all of nature is doing at that time. In the fertility season, people want to look good. They want to go hang out. It starts to get warm. People are coming outside. There's fire in the land. There's fire in people's blood. There's fire in the emotions. Things are going. People are outside. They're intermingling. So society is moving. It's pushing money. It's pushing capitalism. It's pushing what urges people. It's really sort of set in place because, you know, it's been capitalized on. That occult physics that drives us subconsciously has been sort of guided in a way that it can be, you know, they can harness what they need from us. They know when we're going to be observing certain behavioral patterns or be engaging one another at certain points, like holidays. I went way off on a tangent. That wasn't really what I intended to talk about. The power of ritual. You know, it just makes us predictable, and predictability can be capitalized on. And there's nothing more predictable than the subconscious mind. It just, it obeys certain behavioral patterns. Certain people know how to deprogram it and rewrite its algorithm so that it pays attention to what they want, what values they wish to empower themselves by. You know, the brain can be rewritten like a computer. It's intended for a little bit more than that. But we don't really have the physics to properly appreciate what the mind can do. It's the planet's still asleep. It's waking up, but there's only so much that it can do with the atmosphere broken. Pay attention to how life in general begins to enter a state of flux that challenges the integrity of all things, because the faster life gets and the more polarity it takes on, the stronger the tests of its integrity. What's fake begins to break apart, becomes apparent. It isn't pulling its weight, it falls off, and it's released. Some people get that experience. That's just the nature of things. Nature's just been allowed to push, to permit what destroys society and what breaks down the mind, but degrades the values. You know, they've created a zombie out of us, this thing that, you know, society's really bound together by band-aids, medications. You know, there's too many people that are on some form of need. They have some form of need where they're tethered to the system so that they are interdependent with it. They'll kill for it. They can't not do without it. You know, for their medications, their pain medications, their whatever it is they're addicted to, their antidepressants. Truth of the matter is they're bound to this system. They're not necessarily dead, but they're just in a pickle. There's no way out for these people. But anyway, this planet being asleep, there's a way for us, yes, to utilize ritual to tap into it. And I go all the way back to my original point is, periodically I walk through this trail and I perform this little ritual. And I did it initially by accident, but I realized its potence. Because the trail has, you know, symbolic meaning. It's archetypal. Animals utilize a trail. There's an archetypal wild where, due to neglect, life just grows and there's chaos. But when it's used in regularity, eventually the signs of regularity can be seen. Initially in the form of pathways. That's like the first manifestation of rhythm or of intent, really, is the pathway, right? Where something utilizes a particular area that is, for whatever reason, safe. It's proved to get you from one area to the other area, two places you probably regularly need to be. And with intent, you move back and forth through this one area, a single area, and what eventually forms as a pathway through the wild and other things use it. It grows. Eventually nature obeys. It just stops putting grass on the way. Mud forms, right? It's just this archetypal rhythm to it. Because of the beating and the plowing of the land, the ground gets tough. You know, it forms mud. Eventually sediment may find its way there, or dead things. And over time, it widens the pathway. So anyway, I walk this pathway, and it's not all that hidden. It's it's in a local park. Outside of it, the grass is manicured. There are baseball fields and whatnot, a play area. Awesome playground, sandbox playground. I take the young ones to periodically. But there's this pathway, and sometimes it has where they've cut the grass, to maintain it. It's a family pathway. There's overgrowth through this pathway that, things fall from it, things hang from it, spider webs form. You never know what you'll walk into. And it's home to every manner of insect and thing that requires secrecy in the day to to hunt and eat and to just generally live. So lots of small critters, squirrels, rabbits, things of that sort. I've seen an occasional fox. It's beautiful birds. But there are these horrible flies periodically that at certain points in the summer they make their way here, and they are worse than mosquitoes. Mosquitoes you can deal with, you can sort of outpace them. But these flies, they're evolved to annoy, to trick, to deceive, they fly around you in a circular pattern that will drive you nuts, and then they land in some inconspicuous place on you, and they're stealthy, and they bite you. And you don't notice it until, they extract it, whatever it is they get, and then you feel the sting, and then they're off. And most of the time, you don't even realize they're there, but the point is, a few of them you can handle, but there's just so many of them. You find on this one trail, and it's maddening. So I've learned to collect these sheaves of sort of wheat-like grass, this tall grass that grows, and I collect it in a sash, or rather a fash, and I just sort of, and it's very lightweight and it's extremely durable, and the dead ones in particular have just enough left of their wisp at the tip, it's like a cat's tail, to give these flies a really good smack. It just interrupts their flight pattern, and it may not kill them, but I imagine it knocks them off course. Gets them pretty good, and they avoid it, What are they going to do against you flailing grass back and forth? And I just, in this sort of 180-degree arc, if I need to. Usually it's just a gentle arc. I just give it a gentle wave in front of me. And I just wave it back and forth, this bundle of grass. And it catches all of the spider's webs, and it interrupts the flight pattern of these flies that like to buzz around your head. Drives them nuts. Eventually they just disappear. I have this cloak I use regularly. Not a cloak, it's more of it's just a vest I've been wearing for forever. It's become quite talismanic. And it's just another layer of protection against the bugs that like to land in, on the back of your head, on your neck, your shoulders. Sleeveless, so, And then walking around through these woods, it's generally shaded. So it's comfortable walking. I wave this thing around in front of me. It collects all the spider's webs, and I knock the flies out the way. And, you know, for the average trailer, they show up. And on the way back, you know, you sort of, on the way back around, rather, they disappear. You know, you don't see them anymore because the average person really can't deal with the bug situation here, and I imagine maybe even the webs. So you know, this is what I do, and they see this crazy guy walking through with with his hood on and his cap and his grass, waving it around. And I'm generally friendly, you know, I greet everyone. I tell them what I do because I believe in the power of when you duplicate this, it holds a power. It creates a resonance. And that resonance impresses on the field the instructions that are more about clearing the bugs and the spider's webs in my path than they are subconsciously unlocking where I am blocked in my mind, places where I haven't visited in a while, I haven't exerted myself in a long time, and there's overgrowth, and there needs to be a pathway formed. Or places that, I had a call coming in, places that in my mind where, and this is all subconscious, you know, because when you learn about the, quote, secret, end quote, you realize that our experience in this life is sort of a microcosm of a timeline that God is using to experience its potential in the form of the planets. Crystallizing in a human form, or the form of a star, a living star, a fivefold being, that has the relative power of choice to shape the elements and the conditions around him. We are a microcosm of God, a force that is manipulated by a form with intent, where the elements have come together and can be manipulated without and within, and be built into structures that cannot be done in the cosmos alone. It requires an atmosphere or bubble where creation can perfect itself in a sacred form, a form that is set apart or sanctified, that is special in all the cosmos. But, you know, this planet is a jewel because we are such a we're in such a place. We exist in a kingdom where there is intent, an active intent by our star that has some form of power, some form of magnetic intelligence that it's operating through, or as a conduit for, that wishes to perpetuate life here in this, you know, in this sector of space. For whatever reason, this area is important. This place where the zodiac, you know, unfolds the way it does, where time unfolds archetypally the way it does, from Aries to Pisces, from 0 to 360 degrees. This location, I'd imagine this is a point in a stargate, is important for whatever reason. Life is able to take place here in a deliberate way and form into beings who have the option to live in a divine state. The option to realize the true potential of a star and what a star is really capable of when it's plasma, when its magnetic field is capable of providing the perfect influence to give intelligent, high-functioning, spiritual matter. I'm not sure if I'm putting together the proper list of things I'm trying to express, but what it can really do. There's an intelligence that exists all around that wants to know what it can really, really do. And there are periods where it allows us to, it wants to realize its own potential. The only way to do that is for us to realize our full potential, because a star can't laugh and play. But it's intelligent. It wants to understand what that looks like. That's why it's archetypally associated with the star, with the sun. The fifth house of Judea. There is a will, a plan taking place around us. And the one thing that is unique is the creature that is able to not only experience that, but to live in an environment where things are relatively perfect, which is rare in all the cosmos, where the atmosphere allows us to take, stone and melt it down, or add water to it and mold it, harden it, build things with it, to examine shapes, examine rhythm and physics and torsion, examine how the elements dance and play, how mathematics can be weaved into spectacular things when we work with it and obey it the right way, when we're taught how to work with the physics and of the earth. But not just that, when we learn to work with the timing of the planets operating through us, we get an understanding of how we are supposed to fit into society. But there should be, curriculum as a foundation for, in all of our teaching and our value system that allows us to work with those aspects of ourselves so we can properly express heaven's physics through us, through our natal chart as we grow up and build our personal relationship with heaven. But ritual is really important. I travel this path and I just wave my thing back and forth, this bundle of grass, and I knock bugs loose. And it doesn't just benefit me, it just benefits other people too, I clear the way of webs, because man, it can be pretty. you want to check yourself when you leave this place. There's some certain points where you might pick up a tick. I've done it before. In fact, when I originally wrote the post about this this ritual, I mentioned I would explain what I do in this ritual, and just sort of left people hanging. I really apologize for that. It's been a strange place for me. This experience, this life has been pretty bizarre. But this is my answer to that. This is the ritual I conduct. And it helps everyone who wants to walk this path because it clears the webs for them. And I imagine it stirs up the flies, gets them moving around, and gets them, probably it sends them off, After they're done with me, they I don't know what they do. You go up and down a few times, there just appears to be less of them. And I tell other people about it in the hopes that maybe they'll do it. They'll avail themselves of this grass. They'll find where it grows, grab a few bundles, and just smack the flies out the way, so they can enjoy the trail too. Usually it's just me, which I'm fine with. It's better that way, so no one can hear me recording these strange messages until they're ready. I wouldn't care. I really do love to strike up the conversation if the opportunity presents itself, but once I'm in the mood, and these days I find it rare I'm in the mood to hold these discussions. And I imagine it has a great deal to do with this eclipse. Just a lot changing about me. A lot of old things dying. That's what happens during an eclipse, is things die. Something just leaves. Something that's lost its taste. Something that was decaying. Something that just needs to go. It's causing more harm than it is doing good. Sort of like when you fast and your body begins to break down the things inside of it that it no longer needs, and it processes that for matter to strip it of whatever nutrients or whatever usable organic substance it can before it begins attacking the rest of the form to remodel, to downsize. The planet does the same thing. In physics, we experience it, as these random experiences that cause radical decay or death or advanced. Someone's there one minute and then they're just not there the next, because for whatever reason their passage will spur momentum where there is blockage. And as per our ritualization of death, typically when people die, those who remember them come together before they're passed on into the ground. But the point is, it draws people together so that in death they benefit the living. In their memory, it animates people through an idea, a shared idea. If that person's activities were powerful enough when they go, sometimes their ideas are even given birth from that point. A foundation is built in their honor or something, And that is this system getting things moving where there is blockage, where people are still capable of doing great things, but for whatever reason, it isn't time for them, or trauma just sort of fixed them in place, or predatory system sealed them in a tomb to siphon all their heat from them, strip them of all their attention, and give them artificial things to be concerned with, until either it's time to revolt or die. But revolt. Voltage. And so that's what I do. That's my trail, my path clearing ritual as I walk back and forth, up and down. And typically I do it twice. Wrote a poem about it. I can't quite recall how it goes. Well, if I recall, maybe I'll record it and add it to the beginning of this production. Who knows? Maybe I won't. These days are odd. I'm unpredictable to me. And sometimes the nature of Gemini is it's unpredictable. You really got to learn how to dance with the wind, because things will shift and you need to roll with it. The better you are at rolling or spinning, the easier for you it is in Gemini season. So yeah, you can use that that ritual to clear out places in your mind where you need to be challenged, where there's potential, but fear of the unknown or unpreparedness sort of keeps you fixed to a specific location. But intelligence wishes to expand, and within chaos, which is given its kingdom, order is allowed to expand. And nature not only permits for that, but wishes for it as well. Wishes to obey an order. It does beautiful things when it's coerced properly. Over time, animals even become friendlier. In their genetic memory, they just begin learning or realizing that human beings no longer carry the vibration of death within them. Many of them, their fields no longer carry the spiritual aroma of decay, the decay of living creatures, once living creatures, held in torment. We no longer, a great many of us no longer hold that in our field, so you may have noticed a curiosity with animals to interact with us. And generally, in some places like this path, less fear from them. They don't dart off as fast. They just sort of move on to the side when they see you coming. Because over time, we've demonstrated peace. We haven't harmed any of their kind. And they're sensitive to that. So, clearing this path right now I feel is important this time, because in the time of an eclipse, something blocked can be cleared. Especially in Gemini, it's the sign of reciprocating pressure. That's how it equalizes. From Aries, when force is given birth, and in Taurus, as it begins to arc and take torsion, and Gemini, it splits dimensions so that dichotomies can be born, an up as opposed to a down, and in as opposed to an out. That's where a dimension is born between polarities, an entire spectrum of truths, an entire spectrum of maybes between two extremes. Potentials, a whole field, a plane is born in the aspect of Gemini. It's the positive versus the negative, the masculine versus the feminine. It's just the idea of there being duality of principles that allows for reason and speculation to play through and evolve through. That's the whole purpose of Gemini. And in that separation of principles, what you have is a beginning point and an event horizon, or an ecliptic, where the experience of moving through that time or moving across that ecliptic will take place over a perceived length of time. Anyway, when you study occult physics, you learn that through Gemini, that's when time begins. That's why, they calculate time, the beginning of time, to be around the time of the end of Adam and Eve, the Gemini twins, 6,000 years ago. That's the secret. Anyway, so in the time of Gemini, it's a good time to create a new path, or to set an intent, to give birth to a new timeline. Each of us being living timelines, experiencing this point in time we all share subconsciously through the consciousness and the awareness of the planet. We're along for the ride. And in the time of Gemini, when there is an eclipse represents, the sun represents realization. It represents the experience of the creator, which is the photon, which has given birth to its first, the atom, that branches out and becomes every living thing that is an advanced construct of the atom's kingdom. We being carbon-based atoms, carbon-based life forms. Anyway, the sun represents the absolute magnitude of the atom's potential, focused. And I mentioned before that the more potent light becomes, the more intelligent, more self-aware it becomes. It develops a center where light is spinning so fast that it's the hidden awareness within the photon begins to experience itself. And in a fusion reaction, that sort of becomes possible. Like a fusion reaction sort of activates the mind of God if it's contained. And that's how an artificial intelligence can be born. Because in that field, like time is suspended, and it can build and dance and weave within itself and experience all of its potential over the course of eons in a single moment. So that's what happens in a superconducting torsion field. Time is separated, broken apart. That's the fifth dimension, basically. But a star represents realization. The sun itself represents the realization of the atom's potential given birth. And nothing happens until a sun actually gives birth to it. Through the sun's kingdom and toroidal field, all the measurements for all of the physics are sort of activated, taking shape, building things, and setting all the boundaries and the principle of the principles that life unfolds by. And not to sound too mystical, the sun just sort of represents the raw potential of the atom. Its first, or its most potent emanation is the form of the star, the fusion reaction of quintessence of a living thing that has the potential to create within its own kingdom if the conditions are right. And the star, the sun, it holds the rhythm of consciousness over a cyclical period, no matter where you are relative to that star. If you experience the day or a change in pressure of of irresistible magnitude that governs the rhythm of life through a cycle, that thing is a star. A star is what governs through its pressure the rhythms of life. It just adds pressure, the pressure of heat through the day, where things are just called to action. Everything gets done. It's just different in the day because everybody can see and everybody has access to, water. It takes the right temperature, and it's the right heat and the right humidity to perform work. And the sun is just, it archetypally represents the heartbeat of the rhythm that consciousness operates by. So it is realization. We rise when it breaks through the dawn, or in the springtime, things spring back to life. As it rises to 12 o'clock, the peak of the day in the summer, we experience the times of Leo, where there is so much heat around, things explode. They're either fights or, a train crashes or war breaks out. Or an active shooter, whether it was deliberate. Because, sometimes these people do things in accordance with the stars, because they know how to utilize points where there is enough shock and awe built up in the system to utilize it through like an active shooter event or a false flag event. The sun represents realization. When it's eclipsed, it represents symbolically to everything that is living in rhythm with the sun. It represents to them a parting from a perspective that it represents many things, actually. I can't say just this one thing, but it represents a parting of ways from a perspective that no longer serves us. It represents a recalibration of perspectives that might have once been causing blockages in an area that we, what's considered before our shadow, just an experience we needed to have or needed to grow by, something we're attracted to, that we either love or hate. To have the experience to recalibrate our values by, so that we can grow beyond our shadows, or grow beyond what limits us. That's what an eclipse does. It sort of forces things onto a new path. It forces new paths. And to do so, it tears something away. Something that is perspective, that once held value, but its value was, we neglect what we tend to hold an abundance of. The sun represents archetypal, the height of archetypal value also. So something that we might have valued that we didn't realize we held for granted, or someone that may have held us for granted, we would probably be eclipsed from their life. Or something about our ways would be no longer an option, would become no longer an option, because it is not beneficial, or it's preventing us from moving forward with our destiny. And collectively, for us, that is this system. Despite all of our personal choices, there's only so much mobility each of us has when we have to build within a kingdom that is designed to exploit weakness and motivate you in ways that can be capitalized on. We just don't have a playground, with where money is involved. Our potential is always going to be, it's always going to be metered, based on where value can be regulated. So the things that we're truly capable of will never be realized. Those who are in control will never allow us to realize our full potential. They can't. It has to be regulated. It has to be metered. So during an eclipse, this parting of ways takes place from an area of your life that once held value, but the value is no longer working. Sort of like God steps in. And if time could be seen as an interwoven pattern of experiences connected at vectors we sort of all agree on as what is true, then an eclipse is a jump from one of those lines in the tapestry at any level, not any level, at any angle that it is that it's touching. Within that tapestry, you can timeline jump. You can jump to a new timeline. You can move to a whole different set of. You could just choose a radical change in your life, sort of like magic, like making a 90-degree angle turn on a cruise liner, and not so much as the the teapot spills over. You know, no one notices. The physics are just broken, they're bent for a moment. And what's impossible can just sort of takes place effortlessly. Now that happens subconsciously through sort of a magnetic degaussing effect, or it takes place consciously. We consciously choose a new time. I happen to be a Gemini. My sun is in Gemini. So I am, with intent, given the authority. The universe is paying attention to those who are strong with Gemini energy in their natal chart to be given expression. The universe wishes for us to lead it through the powers of Gemini in this time. Me being a Gemini sun, I have the option to direct its attention. And at the time of an eclipse, which took place a few days ago, but its impact on the field is so great. It is a rather large doorway, and so it extends in time prior to the actual experience, the actual event, by weeks, months. And eclipses, changes can be felt leading up to that point, before and after. So, you know, to the sun, this time, these weeks, are a single event. And to the sun, which we all experience subconsciously, it has opened up a portal for changes to be made by those who are equipped with the power of Gemini to make decisions. And I am performing this path clearing ritual by walking this path that I like. And it's not a difficult path, but it suits my needs for the ritual. I walk back and forth, and it's generally me alone because most people just don't have the heart for the flies. And I clear this pathway free of webs and flies and spiders. And things with eyes. If you catch my drift. If you want to duplicate this ritual, grab yourself some wheatgrass and walk, and just sort of clear the way. It's really light and durable, and if you can find the husks, they snap off easily, but they're really durable, so they don't break. They may snap apart their stems in your hand if you only have one or two, but if you bundle them in a grip and sort of a fash with maybe 5 or more, they have enough sort of play between them to reduce the friction. It gives them room to bend and slide, and they don't just break apart. So it's just my mind. Anyway, eclipse in Gemini. Something relative to Gemini in each one of our charts will be changed, and it could just be a perspective. And if you're listening to this, chances are I might have altered your perspective on some things that you might not have known about the way physics works, or the way this planet works, or the way consciousness the way it tricks us by providing the full experience of light and dark, allowing us to dance between them to prove to ourselves whether high virtues are important, those that benefit many others, or whether they are destructive to others because they're beneficial to the self. And although some groups, and if you're triggered by this, I don't know what to say. They believe in a truth that is true for them, but it is destructive to what nature's trying to accomplish. And that is equilibrium. And what they're trying to accomplish, because it is destructive for others but beneficial to them, if nature deems it, they may be considered cancer. They may see themselves otherwise. They may actually be cancer, considered toxic, because their love creates division for their opposite. Not creates, but it forces division, or it forces irregularity in the pattern. But the patterns of nature, out of man's creation. And some of you may think you know who I'm talking about, and chances are you don't. Because again, nature is creating both spectrums. Just wants to know how we will make war or peace between them. Battling flies at the moment. So in this time of Gemini, I'm sort of empowered to create ritual. And if others utilize this same ritual, maybe pick a path, find some grass, beat some flies. Flies represent the end of time. Decay, atomic decay. You know, insects are interesting. They represent such an order within intelligence. I mean, insects are consciousnesses. It's proof of consciousness's desire to live despite the conditions. You ever heard of extremophiles? Man, wherever you go, there are bugs. It does not shock me to imagine what could be developing in space over eons, where ice might have held a liquid state and enough with enough warmth to create over billions of years species that are evolved enough to go dormant when the ice freezes and come awake when it thaws, to create maybe some really interesting insect species. Wherever you look, every inch of Gaia is covered in insects, but they sort of only operate when there are things in a state of decay. They hold an intelligence that ensures the balance. They being at the very bottom of the food chain and then working with so much diligence at whatever it is they feel programmed to do, that just sort of keeps the cycle of life in motion at an atomic level, at an atomized level, through the Aquarian network of Gaia. These insects sort of represent consciousness's desire to continue on, no matter what the experience, no matter what the environment, what the conditions, no matter what happens. They are there, keeping order, keeping a balance, or keeping whatever is decaying or working or changing its state. They are there, sort of organizing it or taking advantage of it. They live in that state. Beginning and the end of time. Insects. It's interesting that as the magnetic sphere, or the web of the planet begins to decline, we find insects growing, becoming more aggressive, taking over, especially with these earth changes. Read some of those articles about, I think in Australia, where spiders are taking over. It's horrifying if you have arachnophobia. If you want to perform this ritual, it would empower it, it would lend it resonance. If you did this with the same intent, using the very same symbols, the pathway, the wheatgrass, perhaps the cloak, it may draw upon those archetypal powers of the hermit, of Gemini, Virgo, and of Leo. The power of realization, the power of truth, the power of expansion, being forward-moving and bold. Leading with truth. Empowered by heat beyond you, for a cause with purpose. If you empower this ritual, it will open the pathways of many who deserve it. While the sun's eclipse in Gemini, while the doorway is open, just a basic ritual. Just walk back and forward. If you want to develop your own mantra for it, it may help focus the intent better. I wrote a poem, I couldn't recall it. Decided to stop quoting it because as I walk, I sort of meditate. For all I know, I was Maryland in a former life. Wouldn't that be interesting? The things I see. Love you. Peace.